Good morning and welcome everybody to another art clinic online this Saturday morning. We have a real treat for us this week with Rockville Art League supporting us on our second art forum that we're doing as an art clinic online. If you recall, back in January, we had DC plein air artists hosted by Christine Lashley, kind of giving us an overview of what it's like to work in the plein air circuits around here. And this month we have the DCAMC, the Art Models Collective in the DC area, and it is sponsored by Rockville Art League. And before I introduce Patrick of the Rockville Art League, I want to say thank you to everybody involved with this forum, because it's quite a lot of work to kind of put something like this on. So thanks everybody, and I'm going to pass it to Patrick for just a couple seconds, so he talks about some of the upcoming exhibitions. I think May 19th is right. We have we're really excited to be partnered with Rockville for this forum today. Hi, Patrick.
Hey there. Thank you, Jordan. Thank you, Mariana, for giving the Rockville Art League the opportunity to sponsor today's session. Rockville Art League was founded in 1957, and no, I was not one of the original members. Almost, but not quite. I second group. We have 225 members, and they're everywhere from people that just love art to practicing professional artists. So we got everything in between as well. Many of our members particularly appreciate our juried shows, and Lisa Sieg, wave Lisa, is in charge of putting together and running these juried shows, and it looks like we've got a little write-up about it here. We do work closely with the city of Rockville, and that allows us to show at the Glenview Mansion Art Gallery, which is a beautiful exhibit space. They host weddings there, etc. Plenty of parking. And our juried spring show opens on May 19th. That's a Sunday, and the opening Meet the Artist event is from 1:30 to 3:30. And if you'd like to come, it's open to the public. And if you'd like to learn more about the Rockville Art League, please look at our website. It's rockvilleartleague.org, and there's more information there. And Jordan, I'd like to continue with just a little bit about our models today. People are really hard to capture, to draw, to paint. You want to have a beautiful work of art, but you'd also like to have a likeness if you can. I've had the pleasure of working with all four of the models that are speaking with us today. Not every one of my paintings is a success, but I've got two here, one of Gazelle and one of Harry, that I'm showing off in the spirit of self-promotion here. So if we have models like these four, the process of painting people becomes that much easier. Why? Well, they're beautiful, these models, even Harry. They're able to stay in their pose so long, and I don't know how they do it without even breathing. And they're athletes in that regard. And then finally, these models are very accomplished people beyond what they do with their modeling. They all have lives outside of the modeling process. They're accomplished artists. And most importantly, they're wonderful people. Thank you, Gazelle, Sheba, Harry, and Jalene for joining us today. And thank you again, Jordan.
Thank you so much, Patrick. And I second that. Everything you said about the models that are here today is 100% accurate. And I do want to encourage everyone to go check out the show at the Glenview Mansion on May 19th. The Rockville Art League, I've judged shows there in the past with your group, and you guys are literally the best in terms of organization. Quality of artists is absolutely phenomenal, and the space that you guys exhibit in the Glenview Mansion is incredible. I'd like to start introducing our participants today, and our kind of moderator, Jalene, is going to kind of give you more of a run through, but with everybody. But I want to first thank Jalene and Sheba, Gazelle, and Harry, of course, who is very beautiful, for joining us today. But without further ado, the DCAMC, I'll pass it to you guys. Thanks.
All right. Thank you so much for the lovely, warm, and welcoming introductions, Jordan and Patrick. Really appreciate it. I know I've loved working with you all. We all love working with you all. So this is a real treat for us. So like Jordan said, I'm Jalene. I've been modeling professionally since 1999. And I hope to continue modeling for another 20 something or so years. And so let me introduce my co-models. Gazelle, if you're ready.
I'm ready. Hi, I'm Gazelle, and I've been modeling about 14 years. And I'm what is considered a traveling model. So I'm not just local, but I also travel stateside and internationally. So super excited about being here today.
And Sheba?
Yeah, sure. Sorry. I'm here. Hi. I'm Sheba, and I actually no longer model full-time, but I do still model part-time, weekends and evenings. I now work full-time at the Washington Studio School, as a model coordinator and registrar there. So I'm a little bit on both sides of the modeling thing, where I work with models and booking them and setting up a safe space for them to work, and I work on the administration side of like coordinating with artists and things. So I feel like my time as a model really helps inform how I work with models now. And I hope that it does so in a very positive way, because I'm in a position to sort of implement a lot of the things that I wished I had as a model. So these types of discussions are very important to me, because they foster community awareness of the needs of both artists and models and how we work together. So thanks for having me.
And Harry, bring your beautiful self forward.
God, you're too funny. I'm Harry. I've been modeling for 10 years. I feel like the newbie amongst this group, even though it's been 10 years. I'd retired, luckily, early from my full-time job, and kind of found my way into this. And it's been a wonderful experience. And thanks for having me.
Sure. So a little bit in terms of the DCAMC. So it is the DC Art Model Collective, which we started pre-pandemic. Sheba and Gazelle and I were in there laying the groundwork for this organization, and it has evolved quite a lot over time. During the pandemic, we switched to supporting 13 models, working probably 99% virtually for about 2 years. And we hit the ground running. It was like March 2020, everything shut down. By April 2020, we were doing virtual sessions. And so a lot of work went into it, and it really changed what we thought organization for models could be. And so we're really proud of it. Now it's transitioned into another kind of incarnation, but still supporting models. And if I could have Gazelle talk a little bit more about what's going on today, because Gazelle is she is really handling quite a lot of the administration on it.
Oh, thanks, Jay, for that wonderful introduction. Yeah, like she just mentioned, we have really sort of transitioned out of just being sort of an online support for models and for artists into being a resource and it also a support for models and or artists in person, because there's a vast number of resources and questions and information that both artists and models are looking for, and it's out there, but those two things are not connected in one space for artists and models to find. So essentially, DCAMC has now become a space for you to go to find and locate those resources, to say, okay, hey, if I'm looking for a model that's, I'm traveling to New York, I can find a model that's in New York, or I'm looking for resources as someone who's new as a model or new as an artist working with a live model. and you just have questions. So now there's forums where you can go in and drop a question and say, hey, like, I'm looking for information. Where can I go to find the information, or just getting the information from the members that are already there. So it is really a network that we are hoping to grow and expand, even more than what it is today. So
yeah, so there's some links in the chat. There's going to be a link at the end of our presentation. We're on Instagram and we have our website. So I'm going to start clicking through our slideshow. And we're going to go ahead, and we have a series of questions prepared, and we also have some stories and stuff that we think you all will enjoy. So if each of the models would take a turn with the questions, I'm going to put Harry in the hot seat first, so he's not feeling last all the time. How did you begin your career as an art model? And along those lines, what drew you to this line of work?
Well, actually, when I was in college, they were advertising for art models. And I really thought about it then and wanted to do it, but just did not have the guts. So flash forward 30 years and I had retired. I was looking for things to do along the arts line. I decided for a while, I'm thinking about modeling, like a print model stuff. And I went to one of those little forums, but there were too many restrictions about having your comp card and making sure you always look the same. And do you want to relocate? And so that was kind of the end of that. But then I took a chance and started out with nude art photography, built a portfolio, and then put it out there on the network Model Mayhem. And some artists began to pick me up to do stuff, where I met Gazelle and another life model, Wayne Bladen, doing sort of a live action graphic novel photography body painting thing. And through them, they got me kind of going on the life modeling into class. So it's been a lot of fun. I have a big background in studying art history, theater, music, dance. So this is kind of like right down my alley, and just quite a little bit of a maybe amusing story. The very first time I modeled in person was for a naked drawing group. I got this job through a friend of mine. And so I went there having no idea what this meant. Well, it was all male, and they all took off their clothes. And I thought, oh, so I don't know, it was supposed to make me feel more comfortable or not, but I thought it was an interesting introduction to life modeling.
I think I know of that gallery.
Yes, I'm sure you do.
There's definitely quite a bit of those out there now.
Yeah, but it was an interesting introduction. It's like, oh my God, what the hell did I get myself into? But that's it, it's since then it's just taken off, and it's been wonderful.
Mm-hmm. Well, and Harry and we met by getting booked together for a class, but it was a rare time where the coordinator let us know ahead of time and check to see if we were comfortable. It was not the accidental double booking.
No, it was, but it was fun. It's like, oh, I know you from Facebook. Nice to meet you. Let's get naked and model.
Yeah.
It was fun.
Gazelle, how about your introduction to this line of work?
Well, so my introduction was a little bit different, because art has always been a part of my life for forever. So photography was really like my introduction into it, because I've done photography since I was in grade school. And so, because I've always had a camera, and my family was big into photography. And so I always got cameras, and getting my grandmother's Polaroid camera was like the thing. So when I decided to start modeling, it was really just part of me wanting to be in front of the camera, because I was always behind it. And I was like, okay, well, what is this with being in front of the camera? Because everybody was always like, you are never in any of your photos. So I said, all right, well, I'm going to try it. And then I realized just how difficult it was to be in front of the camera. It is a very different experience to be behind it and composing versus being in front of it. So I actually did self-portrait photography for a year before I modeled for any artist or modeled for any photographers, just because I wasn't comfortable being out there, because it was out of my comfort zone. So I did that, and I enjoyed doing it. And then I was like, okay. And then realizing I had spent so much time going to galleries and things like that and not putting two and two together about like art modeling. And then I discovered that because initially when I started up for modeling, I signed with an agency and they were like, you're not an industry standard model at 4'11", and recommended doing stretching and dieting. And I was like, you know what? I don't really think this is really what I had in mind about being in front of the camera. So I started investigating other options and found life modeling, and I have never turned back since. So it's been an amazing creative journey for me, and I'm hoping to continue it for as long as possible.
Mhm. Wonderful. Sheba, now I'll go back to our pictures.
Hi. Well, it's remarkable every time I hear Gazelle talk about her experiences with modeling. I realize more and more it's like, wow, our parallels are very, like, I knew our paths overlapped, but our paths to modeling are very similar in that I came to it from photography as well, from, a familial focus on photography. My father was always documenting family events and, even had he was one of those dads with a camcorder in the 90s. We're hiking up a mountain and he's lugging up this like full VHS camcorder and, talking to himself the whole way. And now we know we're gonna have to watch that later. This hours long hike that nobody wants to remember, we'll all remember forever. So my dad had a twin lens reflex camera, and there are pictures still of me posing for him on that. It was his dad's, and I wore like this old hat and coat, and I'm like 6 years old, and those pictures exist somewhere still. And that was my first modeling. Was little baby Sheba. So I inherited that camera. Didn't learn how to use it till much later, but I definitely had a, floppy disk camera in high school and was always taking pictures at events and of friends and things, but also never in them. And my roommate and friend and that when I was waiting tables, he was a photographer and he photographed models. And so I was editing his photos and giving him like what I thought would be good ideas for photo shoots. And, he was doing a few of them, but he was also like, why don't you just model them? And I was like, ha ha, ha, me, no. And he's like, no, you would be gorgeous. And I was like, no. So I did. I did end up, posing for my roommate and found that I immediately was not interested in anything like fashion or anything like that. So my second photo shoot was mostly nude, and my third photo shoot was fully nude because that was the ideas that I had in my head of creating art. That was the art that I liked, and that was what I wanted to help, bring into the world more of. So several years of posing for hobbyist photographers and doing my own self-portraits, and I had a full portfolio, and I just kept going from there. I started art modeling for classes when I moved back to the East Coast, and it was something I really wanted to do. And luckily, a couple of instructors at the now defunct Art Institute of Washington or whatever reached out to me through Model Mayhem, and I posed for their classes and was able to start meeting local artists and posing for art groups and private artists and then classes. It's one of the more well-known art schools in the area. So that's my journey.
All right. Well, thank you, Sheba.
Yeah, please tell your own.
Thank you. With with mine, I've been on the artist side for a long time. I mean, when I was a little tiny girl, my mom caught me drawing in the dirt, and she's like, I knew what you were drawing. So I've, taken drawing classes and stuff. Then in college, I took life drawing, so I was working with nude models in class, and then like my roommate and I were convincing the upstairs neighbor to pose for us, and then I had other friends in the art department. So one of them, she wanted to do some photo sets, so she like convinced me. She drew like butterfly wings on my back with some kind of hopefully safe magic markers, and had photographed it. So that ended up being my first experience modeling. And then I was taking photography and doing some self-portraiture. And since it was the dark room, I got to develop them. I shot, you know, some artistic nudes that looking back are so lame, but it was great to experiment with. Then I moved to Colorado, and for I ended up supposed to have a date with somebody. Well, it turns out he was an art model, and I'm like, oh, I really want to get connected to the art scene. Well, I never had the date with him, but he connected me to an art job. And so I wound up going and modeling for someone, and I took my glasses off. I couldn't see anything. That helped me relax because I had been super shy about my body before that. And no, being with artists was incredibly liberating. And so I started modeling for side work, and then I wound up, I had a slip and fall several months after moving to Colorado, and I had a mild traumatic brain injury, which like derailed my life. But modeling was a quiet, calm environment. There wasn't too much stimulus to set off some of my brain injury issues. It was like the only job you could actually lay down on the job, and you could set your schedule. So between all my assorted, you know, physical therapy, cognitive therapy, and then as I started to feel better, like basically I ended up modeling full time, and I modeled full time for just over 20 years. And the last couple years now I have a office job, but I'm still modeling like evenings and weekends because I found like I need to be around creative people, and like modeling is it's my quiet time and just enjoying the energy of the artists. So that's my model story. Um, and all right, so on to our next question, which is what are things that you find rewarding about working with artists? And I know our introductions to how we ended up modeling does start to touch on that. So if you want to expand on that a little bit more, I'm just going to go in the order of our photos here. Gazelle, if you could mention a couple things, because we got a lot of questions to get through. So
Really, the collaboration aspect is what I find the most rewarding. The working together, the bringing ideas together, especially for projects that people are doing specifically, like, you know, they have a specific goal in mind, like talking through like, hey, how can we achieve this? And I do costuming and make clothes. So for those people that have projects where it's like, oh, hey, can you make an outfit for me specifically for this painting or drawing that I want to do? Like, I love that part of it. So for me, it's the collaboration aspect.
Sheba?
Sure. So for me, it's, you know, touching on the collaboration aspect, you know, it's definitely that. But for me, I always say that I've modeled to be part of the art process. And it's very much important to me to view art as a process, you know, both personally and in general. You know, personally, it's important to see it as a process because like it's easy to get caught up in, you know, as a photographer, it's like you're always re-editing your photos. You can get torn between the technical aspect of, you know, the technical proficiency and the is a photo technically correct, versus the artistic aspect of like, you know, is this really my vision? Is, you know, how to, you know, photography can be so literal, but to take it to the next step and make it creative and artistic, you have to figure out what it is that you're trying to say and, you know, put that into your work. So I definitely see creativity and art as a process, and I maintain throughout that I model to be part of that process, you know, because it is collaborative. And, you know, I'm observing the artist, I'm learning from them, you know, whether it's a photographer or a traditional media artist. And I just really, really want to be part of that process. I'm inserting myself into someone else's creative life by modeling and hopefully bringing energy into it that, you know, we wouldn't be able to have individually. So
Thank you, Sheba.
Sure.
Oh, looks like I'm next. So with working with artists, one of the things that I particularly definitely find rewarding is when I've worked with somebody long term and I get to see the growth and progression and changes with their work. You know, when you've worked with people for 10, sometimes, 20 years, and seeing the paths that they take, and you get to be part of that journey with them, like it does a lot of good feelings. Um, and so, you know, I find that to be rewarding. Another thing that I like, especially if I'm modeling for classes, is I get to listen in and I get to expand like my knowledge and bring things back for my art. When I had my head injury, I couldn't draw or anything because the contrast of like black pen, like the black pencil or charcoal on white, the high contrast bothered my eyes and would make me sick. So I couldn't do it. But as I'm listening in these classes, I'm doing like the mental exercise, and I could go kind of look at their work. Well, a year later, when I could finally draw again, like my drawing skills had dramatically improved from listening and looking and seeing what everyone was doing. And on a more like, uh, personal note, going in and being around people who are energized and they're excited about what they're doing and they're happy to see you and happy to work with you. Like my day job's great. Nobody's like, we're so happy to have you here. Like, thanks for being part of our process. Whereas when I go into artists, they're like, oh, it's so great to see you. We're so happy to have you. We love working with you. And I'm like, thank you. So those are a couple of my favorite things. Harry?
Oh, I have to agree with with all of you and all of that. I mean, the collaboration when you're working sometimes a lot one-on-one with a particular artist, just the spitballing and tossing ideas back and forth so you come to a kind of agreement of what you want to do, and it's a wonderful experience. The other thing is also, I agree with Jalene, is like sitting in a class, and especially with some of the students that are repeat these classes, and just to watch their progress, it's just amazing, and it's fun. It's fun, and I enjoy seeing everybody's different style. It's a wonderful thing. And once again, when I model for classes, it's like I'm getting all these free art lessons, and it can't be better. I mean, I used to draw a lot when I was a kid, and then during the beginning of quarantine, I said, okay, well, I've taken all these free art classes now. Am I any better? And so I did a few little drawings, and yes, I was. It was really fun.
Great. Thanks, Harry. So now we're going to have a little bit of share time. So this is some of our pandemic activities. And so I'll talk about it, but other models, feel free to unmute and comment. So one of the things that we did, we started doing Zoom sessions. Most of you probably know of our model extravaganzas, but we also were doing individual sessions or collaborative sessions. But one thing that we did several times was an artist social and share. So all the artists who were attending our Zoom sessions, we got together with for another Zoom session, and they could share, some of their work, and if they had any, if they're going to be in any, online gallery shows or anything like that. So it was a really nice way to connect, like outside of working hours.
Yeah, and it was a great way just to connect like as a community, because we were all like in this thing together but separate. So it was nice to have this space where we could all just come and just talk about like, well, I wish I could go out and do this today, like, and knowing that collectively we all felt the same way. So it was nice to have that space to come and talk about art, but just unload and talk about like the day-to-day pandemic life. It was fun. So
Yeah, it really was a way. And a lot of the people that we connected with artist wise and other models as well were people that we met in passing prior to the pandemic. And we had, there's only so much you can politely say in a momentary passing, even if it's somebody that you want to be friends with or you feel like you would like to get to know. It's really hard to sort of like insert yourself into someone else's life and be like, I want to be friends with you. Tell me all the things that we should know if we're friends. And so the pandemic really gave us this opportunity to very directly, very consciously, very with purpose, reach out to each other because we were isolated. So if we wanted any sort of interaction with other people, outside of our household, we had to actively look for it and make a decision to do it and kind of plan on it, because you had to reach out to somebody and say, hey, let's interact on Zoom or by or phone call. And, sometimes, I don't know about y'all, but a lot of my phone calls these days are planned in advance. They're not very random. It's like, I'm gonna be free at 2. Are you free for a phone call at that time? Or you're driving and you just hope that the other person is maybe not driving so that you're not both in danger. But the social and share events came from this like sense of like a lot of what we were missing from drawing groups was the social interaction. Even if it was in passing, even if it was just we're all sitting in one room focusing on one thing silently together, that's still socializing. That's still social energy. And when we're drawing online, we're not doing it together. We're doing it in isolation. So we needed a way to add the social aspect. We had the art aspect, we had the observation aspect, but we needed to add the social aspect. So the social and shares really helped us to connect in those ways. And it's created some really lasting friendships and strengthened friendships that it started before the pandemic. And I'm very proud of them and very happy that we did them. And thank you to everybody who was participating in our online sessions and the social and shares or the drawing sessions or anything we did during the pandemic,
Yes.
because it really helped us
Of-
survive.
Speaking of those sessions, I'm going to go through these pretty quick just to mention, and then we'll get into some more questions. So I was running a lightly instructed session, so I would have my fellow models come and we'd, run through a set thing of poses and stuff, and then I would provide light instruction or guidance or just be there if people had questions. So it was, if people were new to drawing or they, wanted some fresh ideas, we were doing those on a pretty regular basis. And then so that was like a little more traditional side. Then Sheba was doing experimental expressions. And if you want to touch on that for just a moment.
Sure. I just found that the online sessions were, what we were observing among models was that the online sessions gave us a chance to be expressive, because as models, we had all of the control. We had the control over the lighting, we had our environment, we had our pose structure, we had the view that the artist saw. That was a lot of control that we suddenly had, and it's a lot of power. And with great power comes, responsibility, right? So I wanted to try to showcase the creative elements that our models were expressing and show that you can experiment a little bit with the idea of an open drawing session. It doesn't have to be, we start with 10 1-minutes, you do 2 5s, we do a couple of 10s, and then you start on your 20s. And there's space to improvise with posing, there's space to use, and also we were working with unusual spaces, like some of us were in bathrooms and bedrooms and offices and kitchens. So the space and the environment that you're in influences your posing. So I just wanted to showcase that a little bit and highlight the experimental expressions.
Yeah, there were some neat things with like a series of progressions and stuff. So you'd start slowly moving across the screen. So there were some fun things that were a little different that we got to do. We had done a Rocky Horror Picture Show inspired session. That one was a lot of fun. We did that after dark, late in the evening. So if folks had kids, hopefully those kids were in bed. It was not too wild, but it was a lot of fun. And it was just like a different kind of thing. And the artists, would get up and we'd all do the oh God, why can't I think of it?
The time warp.
Yes, do the time warp.
We had a dance intermission.
Yes. And then we had some events where we, some sessions where it might be 2 models working together or 3 models, and we had the 3 muses at tea with Sheba and Gazelle and I, and we just continue to work together. So, all right. So now back to one of our questions. Harry, let's go ahead and start with you. How do you prepare for a modeling session?
the first thing I do before is I stretch. I mean, before I leave the house, I just make sure that even if it's a portrait session, because you're sitting there, but you tend to stiffen up, after about the third or fourth 20-minute session or 25-minute session. So the first thing I always do is make sure that I'm pre-stretched as much as I can be before I go out and model. And then it's just going over 100 times that I have this and I have that, and I have my heater and my water bottles filled, and all those little details. And then I usually go and flip the switch, and it's Harry the model, and there we are. It works.
Great. Yeah, definitely relate. Sheba, do you have a couple things you'd like to share with us about your preparation?
Sure. I'm not as good at stretching before every session, but I always recommend that other models do it. So it's sort of a practice what I preach, but don't practice what I practice.
Amen.
Drink water. I am very good at that. I noticed that on days when I model, partly because before, during, and after modeling session, I'm being more focused and conscientious about drinking water. So on days when I don't model, I tend to be a little dehydrated because I'm not as focused on it. Drinking water really helps your circulation, it helps your joints, and it helps your energy, and it helps your skin. So you look better, you feel better, you move better, and the pain is going to be a lot less. So all of those things. Drink water. It sounds pretty basic and sort of simple. Preparing for a modeling session during the pandemic was a little bit different than preparing for a modeling session normal. So during a pandemic, a lot of what we did was preparing our space. So we would decorate our space. Sometimes it would be fabrics or still life objects. We would create a whole scene oftentimes for long poses. Even for shorter poses, we would create an environment. Usually for me, that means moving everything from one side of the room to the other side of the room. Because I have a pretty small space. Judging the lighting, depending on the time of day, I would be blocking out a window, blocking out extraneous light sources from other parts of the house, and testing my lights, because every time Zoom did an update, our lights changed and how they looked on Zoom, and that is so frustrating. So there was a lot more that went into preparing for a modeling session during the pandemic, and even still for the online sessions we continue to do with various schools and on our own.
So I'm going to jump
yep.
ahead to
Sorry.
Gazelle, just in the interest of time. Yep, but thank you.
Well, I'm going to be quick. I think it really depends on the actual modeling session and what it is I'm doing as to what my prep is occasionally, because I don't necessarily have the same routine for every single modeling gig. But to touch on some things that were already mentioned, I definitely make sure I have hydration. There's a lot of people modeling and not eating. So making sure that you actually have food and something to stay comfortable are definitely things I do when I prepare for any modeling session, regardless. I always make sure I have hydration, food, and whatever necessary items I need for the particular session to be comfortable and to do the job that I need to do. So having all that information ahead of time to know, oh, hey, this is what this job is going to entail, so that I'm prepared when I get to the session, is really the prep that I do. So it's really that communication with the artist to know, what do I need for this specific gig, that allows me to prepare for the session.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I pretty much, my car is always my, and I know it's not just me, I know I've been in you all's cars. The car is the working model supply room. And so I always have my go-to bag. In my bag, there's flip-flops. I've got a couple draperies. I have a blanket. These days I have a heating pad. I used to carry a timer. And so that is always in my car. Now I have a big yoga mat and some cushions, because as I get older, I'm like, I need my comfort. Yeah, so I always have some hydration, snacks, and my go-to bag. And I am terrible about stretching before. That's why I love to start with gesture poses. That's my stretching. So
yeah, that modeling bag is key.
Yes. Okay, so how do we maintain our poses for long periods?
Well, that it really depends on the pose, but I think having a body awareness is really how we're able to maintain poses. Because if you don't know what you can and can't do, someone will suggest, hey, let's do this pose, and then you agree to it, and then discover 5 minutes into it that you're like, this was a horrible idea. But then you've committed to it for like the next 4 weeks. So it really is like having a body awareness of like knowing what can I do as a model. And that changes sometimes from week to week, because I may agree to do something today that I'm like, my body is like, yes, we can do this. And I've had a long week of posing, or I've had stressors during the week. Next week rolls around and then I'm like, wow, you know what? I feel like I'm like at my max for doing the same pose that I did last week with 0 pain that I am now in 3 hours of pain with, you know. So it is having that body awareness to know, okay, hey, I've committed to this. What can I now do to be able to maintain this commitment to this pose? So for me, it's having that body awareness of what you can and can't do.
Yeah. Yeah. For longer poses, like there are certain things that it may depend who I'm working with on if I want to challenge myself. I work with a fair bit of sculptors, and with sculptors, I will challenge myself more because they're usually more accommodating if I need to do adjustments and micro adjustments. Whereas for a painting or drawing, especially if it's one that's like going to be really finely rendered, you can't do that. So like I don't pick as challenging a poses. The other big thing for me is getting my head in the right space. I've got to get into that kind of meditative mind to be able to accommodate the long poses, because there are some times where like everything in your body is like, I can't sit still or I'm in pain. And if you can get your head just in the right direction, you can push past a whole lot. The other thing is ibuprofen.
I definitely agree. I always have my extra strength Tylenol around, but I agree with both Jalene and Gazelle, especially when you're doing, you know, multiple weeks. When you fall into a pose that feels really great the first week, and the next week it could hurt really badly. My part of my mental thing is I'm very, I don't know, visual, but once I strike a pose, then I sort of back off and I'm try to observe myself in my head as what I would look like, but imagining myself as the sculpture, the drawing, the painting. And that is how I just maintain just keeping the one thing, because I'm no longer the live model up there. I am the drawing or the painting or the sculpture. And that works a lot of time. Other times, if people play music, especially if it's pop songs, and you know it's going to be hard, it's like, well, each pop song is about 3 minutes long. So if I count about 5 of them or 6 of them, I know I get a break. And there's many different ways of getting through it.
Oh yeah,
Those mental distractions. Yeah.
that's an excellent point. So for any artists listening, when models are like, I'd like to time myself and I want to see my timer, it is exactly for this reason. I'm like, I can see, oh, there's 10 minutes. It is very a good idea to stretch this arm right now and then put it back. Whereas if I see, oh, there's only 3 minutes, it's like you can muscle through 3 minutes, like you can do it. But if you don't know and you're just existing in the sea of like unknown time, it's a lot harder to hold things.
That mental stamina is a thing.
Yeah, mental stamina for sure. Yeah, and everything you guys have already said, but you know, I definitely say that's where drinking water comes in. It helps with the circulation and the joint pain and all of that. And you know, there was at one point where like you said, Jalene, I was posing for probably like 3 sculpture classes in 1 week for the same instructor, and he wanted to do the same pose for all 3 classes for continuity. And I was like, okay, but it's not going to be a standing pose. It can't be, because I can do 2 of those in a week, but not like, it's just knowing what your limits are before you agree to things and scheduling accordingly, which is a very complicated math puzzle of, okay, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm doing that. Oh crap, I can't do 2 Thursdays in a standing pose, or I need to make sure that this person, it's more than just scheduling. It's like balancing all of the things and trying to make predictions about what you think your body might be doing. And that comes with experience. And you're not always correct. So being
Oh,
patient with
absolutely.
yourself.
I'll just throw in there, I always try to make sure if you're doing a portrait or some kind of thing and you've got your body and head turned one way, I try to make sure the next gig I have, I'm not good at it, but I'm doing the opposite direction, because if you do a whole week of all in the same direction, the same twisted head, it's not good.
Yeah. So my advice to instructors and artists would it be, if your model is requesting a particular pose or not to do a particular pose, they're not just being obstinate. There's usually a good reason. And you know, it's best to trust the model, to trust their bodies. And we will work with you, but we have to be careful with our bodies.
Yep, for sure. In what ways do you think being an art model has influenced your perspective on art and creativity? Harry, can I put you in the hot seat, or do any of you want to like?
No, that's fine. You know, like I said, I had really from a little kid was always into art history, theater, music, dance, the whole 9 yards, and I've been able to pull all that stuff out again after being in a the 9-to-5 job for a long time, and it's been wonderful. I have too many costumes, but it's just, I put in a costume and suddenly I'm a character again, even if it's for a portrait. That's each costume has its own character and attitude and whatever. And doing all the Zoom stuff when we're talking about preparation has allowed me to create all these little sets and things. And I did a bunch of what I call the quarantine selfie reference photos, because I had nothing better to do during quarantine, and created lots of characters and was able to sell those and make some money. And as you see right now, I have my fictional boudoir set up here because it's a nicer background than anything else I've got right now. So it really has allowed me to kind of get back into that theater and that kind of creativity. And I've had a whale of a time doing it.
Yeah, I completely agree. Doing the virtual ones was really helpful for that, instead of lugging things and trying to convince the artists like, but you've used the same backgrounds all these times. Like, look, I have this whole bag of surprises for you. Let's use some of these. I was able to put them out there, and since then artists have been like, oh yeah, I saw that that setup you had. Can you bring any of that? Can we recreate it? I will say, being a model and listening in on artist conversations and hearing their stories, it's given me a much broader and deeper appreciation for art, in particular things that I did not necessarily care for before. I used to be like, everything realism, that was my favorite, did not stray beyond that. And seeing like the process that people do, like impressionism and abstract stuff, now I'm like, oh my God, this is so fascinating. Like, the stories behind things give me a deeper appreciation, and the process of it. Like, I could see so much more now than I ever could before. And like, being a model, being the fly on the wall for it really has helped. So Sheba and Gazelle, did either one of you want to add anything?
Well, I think mine is actually a little bit reverse of the question, because it's really more so my background and stuff in art and creating things that has really influenced my art modeling. Because like I had so much art history and spent so much time in museums, like studying art prior to my art modeling, that when I started art modeling, I really was pulling from a lot of that to pull into my art modeling. So for me, it's actually been like a reverse of that, where it's like there's all these ideas and stuff that are in my head, and oftentimes I can't remember the name of the artist because I have a horrible time with names, but there's like this painting that's in my head where I'm like, I remember like when I was in college and we studied this artist's work, and I'm like trying to remember the name, but then it's like that work is what I'm drawing from for the creativity that I'm bringing to the artists that I'm working with. Because I think the other thing for me is that as models, I think people just see us as models. We are artists, and our medium just happens to be our body. So it is really not a collaboration of like two different things. It's really a collaboration of artists that is taking place when we are bringing our ideas and stuff. It's like we simply have a different medium versus, you know, it's the same as if there's a sculptor and someone who does oil painting that come together for a collaboration and they're pulling ideas from each other for a specific project. For me, it is that exact same thing where it is, we are artists, our mediums are our bodies, and we are working with artists where their medium is sculpture or painting or drawing, and we're pulling ideas together to create something else that's beautiful and magical. So that's really where it is for me.
Nice.
I would say that part for me, my perspective of being an art model has, influenced so being an art model has influenced my perspective of art and creativity by giving me more of a sense of myself as an artist. And also, understanding that while art modeling seems like a very static process, it's very much about movement and understanding how movement works. In order for a pose to be interesting and dynamic and expressive, there's a lot of what's not being said and not being, it's the potential for expression. So I see posing as sort of pausing time. What's before that moment and what's after that moment are just as important as that moment itself. And you're taking this one moment, this pose, and you're stretching it out in time. And how can you do that? Like, well, it's a combination of imagination and stamina. So you're trying to recreate the same moment over and 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 over again, so that the artist has a long enough time to capture what they saw in that moment. So here's where gestures are important. Gestures are very important because that's how you get to know your model. That's how you get to know how your model moves. That's how you get to know the personality of their body, the personality of how they interact with their environment, how they settle, how they move their weight, how they shift from one pose to the next. It's how you can understand the micro adjustments that happen during a long pose by seeing how they move when they're doing gestures. I learned that there's a lot of movement in posing. And I could talk about it all day because I'm very passionate about the idea of movement and gesture and how it relates to being a good art model and understanding working with models in art, even when you're doing longer poses. But that's me.
All right. Well, thank you, Shiva. We have some more slides, but we're coming down to the wire on our time. So I did want to touch on a couple of the collaborations, and then we'll have time for questions from our wonderful attendees. So one of the collaborations that DC Art Model Collective and us as individual models did was during the pandemic, the shutdown period, we did a online figure drawing exploratorium / marathon with the Washington Studio School. It was called The Art of the Figure. And as you can see, it was 6 hours long, and there were a bunch of us models, and we were all taking turns and doing different poses and stuff. With the studio school, we also, for a while, we're collaborating with our model extravaganzas, which is a virtual session. And we've done like 37 of these things, but we were really happy to partner with the studio school for some of those. And then we're doing, and actually we're still doing, right, Shiva, there's still the Monday open sessions, which a bunch of us are still modeling for virtually. And so those were a lot of fun. So that was our collaboration with Studio School. Then we, not as DCAMC per se, but a couple of us models from DCAMC, we got to collaborate with the National Gallery of Art. They started having a Community Voices, which was a community advisory committee, and trying to give voice to people who normally don't get voices in the art world. And so in particular, they were looking for models. And so it was Gazelle, Shiva, and I, and our dear late beloved friend Desi. We got to participate in it, and we all got to have our names up on the wall at the National Gallery of Art. We got to participate in several projects with them. They paid us as, you know, as consultants and advisors, and just the respect and high regard and the wonderful treatment was really phenomenal. And for us to have recognition from an institution like National Gallery of Art, where they're recognizing models in an important way, was huge. And that has sparked several other kind of collaborations and interactions since then. And other models. Hopefully I'm not taking your time to talk about it. So, okay, thank you. And then so we've talked about the model extravaganza. Like I said, we had done 37 of them. 36 of them were online, which is, for a while, it was every month for a couple years with occasional time off. Now we've had to scale back, but we just had Artomatic, which was the 25th year anniversary. It's this huge event where, you know, 700 to 1,000 artists and creatives, including visual artists, performing artists, take over a building. We got an 8-floor building in DC. Jordan was showing there. Shiva was showing there. I was showing there. Sarah, who's a member of the collective, was showing there. Tons of people in our community, artists, and then also models, were showing our artwork there. And so they had some special events. So I said, hey, can we do our model extravaganza there? All right, Gazelle and I said that to each other. and so we did. And we were super excited and happy. We received a generous sponsorship from the Hyattsville Figure Drawing Group, so that models doing it could get paid for doing it, which was really nice. And it was super well attended. Everybody seemed to have a lot of fun. We had music, and, you know, we have themes. I'm gonna try not to cry, but Jenny was doing Hyattsville Figure Drawing Group, who sponsored us and supported us. And
She
I'm not
passed.
succeeding. She
Yeah.
passed the next day. And so we're all pretty lost without her, but we wanted to mention her. So yeah. So these were some of the other questions that we had, but so having collaborations with you artists, you can see it's significant to us. You all are folks that we care about and love, and it goes beyond, you know, just sitting and posing. So yeah. Sorry. Okay. Yeah. So excuse me. So real quick, there we did want to touch on if there are references that artists, or models for that matter, could use to learn more about either working with models or working with artists. There's a book called The Art Model's Handbook that's out there. And really what we've been working to build is our website as a resource for both models, artists, and also organizations. There are other sites out there, Model Mayhem, I think Model Society. So there are definitely some resources. One thing that we did at Artomatic was Gazelle and I, we also taught some classes. So we taught a class for artists on how to work with models. And then we also taught one for models, you know, who are looking to start art modeling. And on a little sidebar with it, we met Juan, I forget his last name, but he had retired for a bit, but like he's modeled in the DC area, like back in the 1970s. And it was very much a treat to meet him. So, so if anybody's looking for additional resources, you can definitely feel free to reach out to us. And oh, so a fun thing. This was the first time that Gazelle and I met in person, and hopefully the photo date was correct, that it was 2015. We had seen each other on the walls. We both knew Sheba, and there was going to be an art gallery opening or something that night, and she was like, "Jalene, you should come out." And so I did. And then I got to meet Gazelle, and the three of us have been like three peas in a pod ever since. So then you fast forward to 2024, and this is us at the opening night of Artomatic, where Gazelle came out to support Shiva and I with having our workout. And yeah, so little one for the memory banks. And then the four of us pre-pandemic, we're so young and untainted by global disaster. And this was a paint and sip event that I was running, and I don't remember. I think actually Sheba and Harry, were you both modeling for that one? I can't remember.
I don't remember. I think all three of us had modeled for you at one point, and then we
Yeah.
also were like helping you out with stuff. So I don't remember which was which that night, but
yeah. And then finally, where you can find us online, we also have a newsletter, and to get on that newsletter mailing list, you need to go to dcartmodelcollective.com and then scroll down at the bottom of the page. It has where you can sign up, but you have to actively sign up for it. So hopefully I have kept us pretty close to on time.
Cool, thank you. There was a few questions in the chat, but I want to ask one that I thought was interesting. I believe that you guys are starting to, as a collective, kind of work with people who are interested in becoming models. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, we are. I actually do one-on-one training with models, but I also do group trainings. And that is hopefully something that in the future we will be able to do as a group with DCAMC. But there are people that are, members that are offering classes, and as those classes are being offered, they will either be on the calendar or posted in one of the groups. So there is specifically a group on DCAMC for new models, and then there's also a resource group for artists that are looking to work with models. So information for either of those things would be posted in either of those groups.
And if I could for just a moment, I see the last question in the chat says, curious if there are opportunities to explore one's suitability for art modeling. So in addition to the resources offered by the collective, one of the things that you can do as an individual while you're waiting for something to be scheduled or waiting for somebody to be available to be able to offer a one-on-one type training is you can explore yourself by working with another artist or a friend of yours who draws. You can kind of pose for each other. You can trade. Basically, you trade your time with somebody else who could use drawing time. And, it's a good chance to, in a friendly environment, be a little bit vulnerable with your body and, try out some poses and try out different times of, try 1 minute poses, see how dynamic you can get before you, fall over. Don't hurt yourself. Give your, you could try different increments of time, 30 seconds, 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15, 20. But we always do say, just find another artist or a friend that wants to draw and trade your time with each other to practice a little bit.
And if you're not yet ready to do it in front of another person, you can do it while you're at home watching movies. Set a timer and pick a pose and see how long you can sit in it. You're preoccupied or you're, doing other activities. Even when you're standing in line at the grocery store, use it as a time to see like how long you can stay in that one pose while you're standing there. I've learned to time when someone tells me, oh, it's going to be 15 minutes before I get my food. And I'm like, you know what? I'm pretty sure it's been 10 minutes. And I check and it's been 20 minutes. So you get to, if you just, in instances where you wouldn't even think that, oh, hey, I can like time myself to practice, use it as a practice time.
Waiting for the microwave.
Exactly. Yeah.
Just watch the timer on the microwave and you got it.
You can see your reflection in the glass. We all have webcams now, or we have our phones. Set your phone up
Mhm.
and see how you're looking. You understand that there's distortions that go on, but it gives you a pretty good sense of kind of what your body's doing.
Mhm.
If you don't have access to a big mirror, like we all have
Yeah.
our phones, so
Yeah. Well, that also gives you an opportunity to see how light changes from different angles too. You can do self-portraits or just watch yourself on the live video. You can see like how light affects your forms.
yeah. And I can't see the chat because I'm doing my screen share. So Jordan, were there some other questions for us?
I have to go back. I have a quick one though. Have you guys noticed trends in like the idea of clothes versus nude or costume versus nude? Have you seen trends? Is it more heavily clothed nowadays versus prior years?
I can touch on this a little. I'm trying to proactively work with instructors and the life model sessions that we offer at the Washington Studio School to showcase both the creative costumes that models are willing and want to put together, and also that I always tell models wear what you would like to pose in. If there's no guidance from the instructor at the time of booking, because I receive the booking requests from instructors, and sometimes there isn't specific guidance. So I will tell my models to wear what you would like to pose in. And then I tell the instructors that please listen to the model in terms of what they would like to pose in that day. So even if a model has posed for them figuratively in the past, they may, not be feeling it today, and they are willing to pose partially draped, or they really like this dress that they bought and they want to see how it inspires artists. And so they brought this dress and they're looking to inspire the artists and work with that. Unless there's a specific need for the class, that's the direction I go. Of course, if it's an anatomy class and it's leg day, I book a model who's willing to do, standing poses or something like that. So I do book my models at my school based on the needs of the instructor, but for lack of direction, I encourage the instructor and the model to lean on the model's creativity.
I don't know that I've seen a ton of trends either direction. I do know that for me, I mean, for the longest time, they're like, no, we don't want to waste you. Like, we want you nude. And I'm like, but I have costumes. And they're like, we love that skin. Like, you're just going to reflect color. And they also, they're not getting a lot of amply, extra curvy models. So they're like, nope, we want the flesh. Well, a bunch of them have seen what I've done, with the virtual sessions with the costuming and props and things like that. So now I'm actually getting some specific costume requests aside from just a portrait session. So that's been, I don't know if it's a trend, but at least for me, that was kind of exciting. I mean, I love just figurative modeling. It's less fuss and less things to carry, but there's something nice about getting to, bring something more to the table or change it up, especially if you've worked together for 10 years. I'm like, sure, you might like something else from me. um, so so yeah, the virtual sessions did help with that.
I just saw this last question that came in from someone about a photographer attending like an open session. Generally, that is not permitted, as photography requires a model release that oftentimes is not available at an open session because of the medium choice. So if you are planning to attend a session and take photos, usually at an open session, the policy is that there's no photography of the model. Or if there are photos, because the model has given permission, it is with the permission of the model. But the process for doing photography is very different than the process of painting and drawing. So oftentimes the rates for photography are much higher than the rate would be for attending a session for painting and drawing. So if you are looking to work with a model after attending a session for a photo shoot, my recommendation is to reach out to them or get their contact information to schedule a photo shoot with them after. There are many models who actually don't allow photography at all because of their security clearance. So it's always best to ask, hey, are you open to photos? Would you be open to doing a photo shoot with me, like after the fact? just being respectful of their guidelines, but also of their boundaries, but also just accommodating the fact that it is a completely different scope and rate that is involved with that.
Mhm.
I think that's good information. Do you have any other suggestions, anybody else, about, the interactions between the artist and the model, kind of this on similar guide to what Gazelle was just saying about photography versus drawing? Are there other things that are important to models that you guys want us artists to kind of be attentive to when working together?
Environmental concerns such as temperature and line of view from not just the front door, but also the windows and things like that. While sometimes models may not care if, somebody not in the class sees them posing, in general, if there's going to be, even if there's not going to be like nudity, if a model is taking a pose, it uses a lot of concentration. So if there's looky-loos looking in from the window from the distance and like jumping around and waving and trying to get our attention or something like that, that can be a little distracting. So sometimes just be aware of the space that you're setting up for the models. I mean, of course, the stone tower is so high, nobody's ever going to be looking in those windows. But if there are other spaces with wider open vistas or something like that. Like sometimes people try to do open drawing sessions in storefronts because they're trying to get street traffic in. And that is good so long as the model knows that in advance and it's like an understanding of like, hey, we're trying to do these sessions to get street traffic. It's okay, and just understand that the model's like attention may be a little bit different. So that is a different environment to be drawing in. And then as far as environmental temperature control and things like that, understand that if the model is wearing clothing, they may heat up a lot faster than the artists who are not wearing costumes. And if the model is not wearing clothing or wearing less clothing, because they're not moving around, they're not like furiously drawing and sweating from the stress of trying to get the features right. They're going to get cooler a lot faster. And
Like
then
if you're cold
yeah, more cold.
and you have a nude model, like
Yeah.
if you're wearing a coat in the classroom and you're cold, yeah, we're frozen. I've had some situations where they're like, "Oh, yeah, I guess it's kind of cold in here." I'm like, "Yes, can I put socks on at least?" Like the
Yeah.
heat's not working, so it's really hard to maintain things when you're cold. Like your muscles, when they're warm, they're relaxed. When you're cold, they're tensing up, so it's a lot more strain.
But it also leads to injuries. That is the thing. Like a lot of people, I've gotten a lot of complaints from people because they tell me, "Oh my God, you always need a heater." But it is also what I know I need in order to be able to maintain the pose that I'm in. If I'm cold and my muscles are tensed up and I'm already in a very dynamic and expressive pose, it is the leading cause for injury. So next week, when I'm there and you're like, "Well, hey, well, you were fine last week. Well, this week I'm not fine because I sat in 3 hours of cold and now I'm dealing with an injury that's going to take even longer time to heal." So really, which is also why I encourage models to bring things that will make themselves comfortable, because artists are not always in a space that is their own space where they are able to make the model feel comfortable or accommodate certain things that the models need. So if the models are able to supply those own things themselves, it oftentimes makes it easier if they say, "Oh, I need this thing. I just need to run out to my car." It's a lot easier for the artist to be accommodating to that if you just need to run to your car and grab something versus, "Oh, well, we need a heater. We have to go buy one." And then you're in the position where you're sitting in cold where you could potentially injure yourself for the next 2 hours. So it's definitely a group and team effort with
On a
all
separate
of that.
note, when especially like, well, Jordan, we've all worked with you for many years, and a lot of these artists now we've worked for, and they know us, they know what our boundaries are, what we are willing or willing not to do, or what we can or cannot do. But especially if you're an artist and you're working with a model for the first time, there should really be, before they ever get on the model stand, that conversation of what their boundaries are, what they're comfortable doing, because otherwise, it's going to be a bad situation. So you want to make them do something that they're not comfortable doing, and they're going to resent you for it. So it's always nice, especially working with a new model, to have that kind of in-depth conversation of how are we going to make this work.
Yeah, that's a really good point. There's a few things that really need to be clarified when you're communicating with a model what kind of session you want. It's one thing to say, I'd love to work with you, can you come over at such and such time on such and such day? Well, we need to know, is it going to be a nude session, or is it going to be clothed, or some combination thereof? Is there going to be photography, or an expectation of photography? Like, those are two huge things. And then on a side note, if you're at a location where there are animals, several of us actually have allergies. And so you show up and you're modeling and like, oh, there's the cat and it's really friendly. And like, a couple of us are really allergic. We try to work around it, but it's something that, people don't think of. And any surface that you're, going to sit on, I'm like, nope, I've got my drapes. But you can't drape everything sometimes, or the cat comes up on you and it's like, oh.
I'm going to touch on one thing you just mentioned, Jay. Please, for the love of God, clean areas and linens that we are sitting on. I bring my own because that's just how I roll. But oftentimes the expectation is that it's okay for models to sit on surfaces or sit on linens and covers that others have sat on. And we're not talking about clothes, we're talking about nude. And those things haven't been washed. And a lot of these things haven't been washed in decades for some of these places. And it's just unsanitary. So that's really, for me, one of the key things. Like, there's modeling stands that people walk on and tramps on with their shoes. So all that stuff is being brought to that surface that my nude form is now going to be laying on for the next several hours. You're sweating on it and everything else. It becomes a place where it's not safe. So having an area that is a safe working environment for models for me, is a really key thing too.
Oh, Mariana?
I'm thinking that, great, this is fantastic. Want to ask you, is there a checklist or a little one-pager that could tell new artists mostly, or even those of us who have already worked with you, but sometimes may forget about the clothing or the cloth that we use, and how, no animals, or if there are animals, what to do. You're prompting me to think about a sort of checklist. Does that exist?
There is actually in the DC Art Model Collective Artist Resource Group. There is actually a sort of a checklist that another artist had actually put in about artists working with models for the first time. So there is, and it's not a comprehensive checklist, but it is just sort of like an overview of many of the points we've already discussed today about like just checking in with the model, like having a safe space, and all of these things are there.
Right. And are you all reachable as individuals as well? If any of our audience, for example, or people who might see the recording later, which should be posted in about a couple of days, but can contact you directly, is that okay?
It's fine with me. Yeah,
Definitely.
I can, if you want to
Right.
double check
Yes.
the emails.
Right, and then you can refer them back to the collective or for resources or whatever, or continue to communicate. Well, this has been absolutely superb.
Well, thank you, Mariana.
Thank you.
Oh, this is incredible.
Thank you guys for having us. It's been great. And thank you, Jordan, for like.
Yes.
Thank you for putting it together.
Yes,
Really.
absolutely.
Thank you, Patrick and Rockville Art League. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Yes.
Thank you, Patrick and Lisa. It's good to
Patrick
see you
and
guys.
Lisa,
Absolutely.
this was fabulous. Boy, I hope that this also becomes a resource, actually, this conversation to other artists, and we feel free to refer them to the YouTube, to Jordan's website as well, or to our YouTube channel, ACO Community YouTube channel. And then you can either download or keep it, or refer others to. This is fantastic. We have, I think, at least one model from Florida who's interested in starting a collective in their
Nice.
region. And so hopefully this will generate much more information and resources and connectivity among all of us. Thank you so much.
Thank
Great.
you. Thank you all for
Thank
having
you.
us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you so
Bye.
much.